Story 1. My ex-boyfriend's wife has completely isolated him from everyone who loves him, and now she's messaging me with disturbing requests that I write fake medical statements. I'm 36 years old, married to an incredible man, and mother to a beautiful 4-year-old daughter. My life is good, stable, and exactly what I always hoped it would be. But lately, I've been pulled into a situation that has nothing to do with my current life and everything to do with my past. My ex-boyfriend, who I'll call Bill, and I were together for 10 years, from the time we were 15 until we were 25. We lived together for the last 5 years of our relationship, and when we broke up, it was completely amicable. We'd simply grown into different people than we were as teenagers, and we both knew it was time to move on. There were no hard feelings, no drama, just two people who recognized that their paths were diverging and chose to part ways with respect and kindness. After the breakup, we stayed friendly. I remained connected to his mother and his older brother Fred through social media, and Bill stayed in touch with members of my family. We had plenty of mutual friends, and for a while, everything felt natural and uncomplicated. A couple of years after we split, I met my husband Dan, who is genuinely one of the best people I've ever known. Around the same time, Bill met his current wife, Fiona. We all met each other's spouses at various points, and everyone seemed to get along well. Over time, Bill and I drifted further apart, which felt like a normal part of growing up and moving on. We'd exchange polite messages on social media every now and then, but we weren't actively part of each other's lives anymore. I was fine with that. I assumed he was too. The problems started when I got pregnant with my daughter. Bill and Fiona had been struggling to conceive, and while I genuinely sympathized with what they were going through, Fiona's reaction to my pregnancy was extreme. She became what I can only describe as unhinged. She told Bill he wasn't allowed to contact me anymore, which honestly didn't bother me at the time. I understood that seeing someone else pregnant might be painful for her, and I didn't want to make things harder for them. I figured staying out of their lives was the respectful thing to do. But Fiona didn't stop there. She started unfriending and blocking all of our mutual friends who were pregnant or had children. This included my best friend Anne, who also happened to be Bill's best friend. Anne had moved across the country, and when she came back to visit, Fiona told Bill he wasn't allowed to see her. Anne was devastated. She'd been friends with Bill for years, and being cut off like that hurt her deeply. I tried to stay out of it at first, but eventually I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I reached out to Bill and told him how much he'd hurt Anne, how it wasn't fair to let Fiona dictate who he could and couldn't see, especially when it came to someone who'd been such an important part of his life. He told me he'd make an effort to see Anne next time she visited, but he never did. After that, I backed off. I didn't want to get involved in whatever was going on in their marriage, and I figured Bill was a grown man who could make his own choices, even if those choices were hurting the people who cared about him. Recently, Bill and Fiona moved halfway around the world to Australia. That's when things escalated from concerning to genuinely alarming. Fiona cut off all contact with Bill's family. His older brother Fred had a baby, and the moment Fiona found out, she unfriended Fred, his wife, and even Bill's mother on social media. She refused to let Bill spend time with his family during the holidays, and when he came back to visit without her, she wouldn't allow him to stay with his parents. He had to stay in a hotel. Fred was furious, and honestly, so was I. Bill has always been incredibly close to his family. When we were together, he loved spending time with his brother and parents, and we used to go on vacation with them every year. Watching him be cut off from the people who loved him felt wrong in a way I couldn't ignore. But what really pushed me over the edge was when Fiona started emailing me. She got my email address from Bill's account, and the messages she sent were bizarre and deeply unsettling. She told me I needed to stop talking to all of our mutual friends so she could add them back on social media. She wanted me to essentially disappear from their lives so she wouldn't have to see anything related to me when she browsed Facebook. I couldn't believe what I was reading. These were people I'd known for over 20 years, and she expected me to cut them off for her convenience. But that wasn't even the worst part. She started telling me extremely personal details about her relationship with Bill, asking for my advice. And then she sent me the request that made my blood run cold. She wanted me to write a statement saying Bill has autism, even though he doesn't, so she could give it to his doctor. I didn't respond to any of her emails. I didn't know what to say, and I was terrified that engaging with her would only make things worse. I hadn't had any contact with Bill in over 2 years, not since I'd confronted him about hurting Anne, and all the information I was getting about their situation was coming from mutual friends. It was clear to everyone who knew them that something was seriously wrong. Fiona was isolating Bill from everyone who cared about him, controlling his relationships, and now she was trying to manipulate his medical records. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was being emotionally abused, and possibly worse. But I didn't know what to do. I was worried that if I reached out to him directly, Fiona would intercept the message. I was certain she was reading his emails and monitoring his social media, and I didn't want to put him in a more dangerous position. So I did the only thing I could think of. I forwarded Fiona's emails to Fred. I figured if anyone had a right to know what was going on, it was Bill's family. Fred called me immediately after reading them. His voice was shaking with a mixture of anger and fear, and he told me he was going to try to reach Bill as soon as possible. I'd forgotten to mention this before, but Bill works as an independent IT consultant, which made it difficult to contact him through his workplace. Fred sent him several emails, and Bill responded with short messages saying he was fine, but Fred didn't believe him. Neither did I. Those emails felt like they were written by someone who was desperate to convince everyone he was okay, even though he clearly wasn't. I didn't receive any more messages from Fiona after I stopped responding, and I assumed she'd given up on trying to involve me. I thought there wasn't much more I could do, so I tried to focus on my own family. But my husband Dan knew how worried I was about Bill, and being the incredible person he is, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Dan and Bill both work in IT, and Dan is close to his boss. He told his boss about the situation, and together they came up with a plan. Dan's boss reached out to Bill through LinkedIn to set up a Skype consultation. Dan figured that if Fiona was monitoring Bill's emails and social media, this would fly under her radar because she didn't know Dan's boss and wouldn't see the connection between him and us. My husband is a sneaky, clever bastard, and I've never loved him more. They scheduled the call for the next day, and Dan hopped onto the meeting as well. He didn't tell me exactly what he said, but the gist of it was that he and his boss told Bill we were all worried about him, and that if he needed help, all he had to do was ask. Bill broke down. He started crying, and through his tears, he told them he felt completely helpless. He thought no one cared about him anymore. He thought everyone had given up on him. It turned out Fiona had been reading all his emails and deleting the ones from his family. She was controlling all the finances, isolating him from everyone he loved, and on top of all that, she was physically assaulting him. He was embarrassed to tell anyone because she's barely 5 feet tall and he's 6'4", and he didn't think anyone would believe him. Dan and his boss didn't waste any time. They told him to pack his bags, head to the airport, and they bought him a one-way ticket back home. Bill arrived a week ago, and he's staying with his mother and father now. Fred has been helping him get back on his feet and handle all the legal aspects of leaving Fiona. Bill's family is incredibly grateful to Dan and his boss. They insisted on paying back the cost of the plane ticket and bought both Dan and his boss several bottles of very expensive bourbon. We were happy to cover the ticket and didn't expect anything in return, but we weren't going to argue with them either. Dan and I decided that now Bill is home and surrounded by people who love him, we're going to take a step back. His family is taking care of him, and they don't need our help anymore. We'll stay in touch, though. I think after everything that's happened, we'll always be close to Bill and his family from here on out. Fred told me Fiona doesn't want to come back home, so at least we don't have to worry about her showing up on our doorstep. I don't know how she reacted when she realized Bill had left, and I don't know what's going to happen legally because I don't want to be that involved anymore. It's time for Dan and me to focus on our own family, especially because I just found out I'm pregnant. I couldn't have picked a better man to have children with. And as a final touch of goodness in all of this, Dan's boss let him bill the hours he spent on Bill's rescue as personal development, because apparently there are still decent people left in the world. Looking back on all of this, I'm struck by how easy it is for someone to disappear, even when they're surrounded by people who care about them. Bill didn't vanish into thin air. He didn't move to some remote location with no internet or phone service. He was still working, still responding to emails, still technically reachable. But Fiona had built a wall around him so thick and so high that none of us could get through. She controlled his communication, his finances, his relationships, and eventually, his sense of reality. She made him believe that no one cared, that he was alone, and that he deserved to be treated the way she was treating him. And the scariest part is that it almost worked. If Dan hadn't come up with that plan, if his boss hadn't agreed to help, if Bill hadn't broken down and admitted what was happening, he might still be there. He might still be trapped in that apartment in Australia, convinced that everyone he loved had abandoned him. I keep thinking about the emails Fiona sent me, the ones where she told me to stop talking to my friends of over 20 years so she could browse Facebook without being reminded of me. The one where she asked me to write a fake medical statement about Bill having autism. What was her end game? Was she trying to have him declared mentally incompetent so she could control him even more? Was she building a case for something? I'll never know, and honestly, I don't want to. What I do know is that Bill is safe now. He's with people who love him, he's getting the help he needs, and he's starting to rebuild his life. And I'm grateful, so incredibly grateful, that my husband saw what was happening and refused to let it continue. Because sometimes all it takes is one person willing to step in and say, "This isn't okay, and I'm going to do something about it." Story 2. My girlfriend destroyed my expensive designer sweater. After meeting my attractive ex, then lied about it and turned herself into the victim when I confronted her. I'm 28 years old, and I'm standing in my apartment staring at the shredded remains of what used to be my favorite sweater, trying to figure out if I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life by ending a relationship over a piece of clothing. But this isn't really about the sweater, is it? It's about what the sweater represents, about the lying, about the manipulation, and about the feeling that's been growing in my gut since Sunday morning that tells me something is fundamentally wrong here. Let me back up. My girlfriend Hannah and I have been together for 6 months. We met because we live on the same street and used to get our morning coffee at the same cafe before work. Those coffee meetups slowly turned into dates, and eventually we became official. I really like her. She's sweet, smart, and pretty, and for a while, everything felt easy and natural between us. We were taking things slow because we'd both come out of complicated situations. Hannah had just ended a 10-year relationship with her ex-fiancé, and from what she told me, it was a disaster. Their breakup involved constant fighting, petty behavior that tore apart their friend group, and drama that pissed off both their families. She never gave me all the details, just said that all their relationship problems came up at the same time and everything unraveled. My situation was different. Haley and I were never officially a couple, but we'd been friends for years. We slept together once when we were both between relationships, but we agreed we worked better as friends. 2 years ago, Haley got out of a bad relationship, and we fell into this semi-official friends with benefits arrangement. We'd still hang out and talk like we always had, but occasionally we'd also be physically intimate. Both of us were busy with our careers, so neither of us pursued other romantic relationships. Then, around Christmas of 2015, Haley told me she was falling for me and wanted to explore an actual relationship. I didn't. I had my reasons, mainly that we had some fundamentally different views on life that would make a real relationship difficult. I told her we worked really well as friends, that she was important to me, and that I didn't want to jeopardize that by getting into something romantic. But I lost the friendship anyway. She went no contact, and even though I hated it, I couldn't argue with her decision. It was reasonable for her to protect herself. Still, it hurt. Losing her as a friend hurt more than any breakup I'd ever experienced, and it took me a long time to find my footing again. Hannah knew the basic details about my history with Haley. She wasn't particularly curious about it, and she never raised any issues about the fact that I still had a few things Haley had given me over the years. After all, Hannah had a bunch of gifts from her ex-fiancé too, so it seemed like a non-issue. That changed at Hannah's office Christmas party. I accompanied her, and to my complete surprise, Haley was there. Turns out she'd recently started working at Hannah's company, in a different department. We exchanged awkward pleasantries, tried some small talk that lasted maybe 3 minutes, most of which was silence, and then Haley left early. I didn't see her again that night. Hannah was somewhere else when I ran into Haley, so when she came back, I told her what happened. She'd never met Haley before, it's a big company, but her curiosity was piqued. Still, I got into a jovial party mood, and everything seemed fine. Until last Friday. I was at work when I got a flurry of texts from Hannah saying she'd finally met Haley. Now here's something you need to understand. Haley is exceptionally attractive. Like, modeling offers since she was 16 attractive. Add to that the fact that her job as an event manager for high-end corporate parties means she's always impeccably dressed, and you've got someone who makes a strong impression. Seeing Haley did a number on Hannah. She didn't come out and say it directly, but she suddenly got extremely curious about Haley and our past relationship. She asked question after question about everything, and then she specifically mentioned the sweater. The sweater Haley had given me. She said, "No wonder you love that sweater so much," in this tone that made my stomach sink. I tried my best to reassure her. I told her there was absolutely nothing between Haley and me, that we hadn't even talked to each other in over a year, except for those 3 awkward minutes at the Christmas party. I told her I really liked her and could see our relationship going somewhere meaningful. But honestly, I was also annoyed. The whole conversation felt unnecessary and exhausting. Hannah slept over Saturday night, and I thought we'd moved past this temporary burst of jealousy. Then she left early Sunday morning, saying something had come up, even though we'd made plans to spend the day together. That evening, I was going through my laundry and saw the sweater. There was a huge hole in the armpit, like someone had literally tried to pull it apart with their bare hands. It was obvious Hannah had done it. I'd worn the sweater on Thursday, and when I put it aside for dry cleaning, it was fine. No one else had been in my apartment since then. I texted her asking about it directly, which maybe wasn't the best approach, but I was furious. She immediately went on the defensive, denying she'd done it, coming up with various explanations for how it could have happened, and repeatedly telling me I was an asshole for thinking she was crazy like that. This morning, she sent me a curt text saying yes, the origin of the sweater bothered her, but she didn't destroy it. The thing is, I know she did. My evidence is circumstantial, but it's compelling. After I put the sweater in the pile for dry cleaning, it was covered by other clothes. When I discovered it destroyed, it was bunched up in a ball on top of the pile. The tear was 8 inches long, something I would have noticed immediately if it had happened while I was wearing it or putting it away. The sweater was also stretched completely out of shape, consistent with someone grabbing it from both sides and pulling it apart. But the most convincing piece of evidence came from Hannah herself. When I confronted her, aggressively I'll admit, she started describing all the alternative ways the damage could have happened, with exact knowledge of the type of damage the sweater had suffered. I'd never mentioned that it was torn in the armpit area along the seam, or that it was stretched out. She knew because she'd done it. I think I need to break up with her. But I've been second-guessing myself constantly since Sunday. Hannah has always been sweet and caring and sensitive to my feelings. I really like her. And we don't have any fundamental incompatibilities. We could genuinely have a good, fulfilling relationship. Maybe destroying the sweater was just a momentary lapse in judgment that she's extremely embarrassed about, and that's why she's being so defensive. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this doesn't have to be the end. But then I think about the lying. It's not the insecurity that bothers me. People have every right to feel inadequate or jealous sometimes. It's not even the destruction of property, though that sweater was expensive and I loved it. It's the way she looked me in the eye and lied. It's the way she turned herself into the victim and made me feel like I was the one being unreasonable for even suggesting she might have done it. It's the manipulation, the gaslighting, the complete refusal to take responsibility for her actions. And that, more than anything else, makes me think this relationship is over. Hannah's cold behavior lasted for 2 days after my confrontation. Then she called me about 40 times in a single afternoon, begging for forgiveness. I avoided most of the calls, but I listened to the voicemails, and my empathy was triggered despite everything. In some of those messages, she essentially admitted what she'd done, her voice breaking as she apologized and said she didn't know what came over her. For a moment, I almost called her back. Almost. Then I found out what else she'd done. It turned out that before those desperate phone calls, Hannah had lashed out at Haley at their workplace. I don't know all the details, But from what I heard, it was ugly and had the potential to seriously damage Hannah's career. When I learned that, I felt terrible for Haley. She didn't deserve to be dragged into drama she'd played no active role in. She'd been nothing but professional and distant, and now she was dealing with workplace confrontation because of my relationship problems. The guilt I felt about that was almost worse than the anger I felt about the sweater. The anticlimactic part is that I didn't even have to break up with Hannah. She essentially made the decision for both of us. She moved in with her parents up north and sent me a message through a mutual friend saying she realized she had serious issues to work through from her breakup with her ex-fiancé. She said our decision to date had been doomed from the start and she needed time to deal with her problems. I wished her the best of luck with that journey, and I meant it. Despite everything, I hope she gets the help she needs. Another mutual acquaintance, this one between Haley and me, reached out on Haley's behalf. She sent word apologizing for her role in the meltdown of my relationship. I told her there was nothing to apologize for on her end, and I asked her to tell Haley I was sorry for inadvertently causing workplace drama. I don't know if Haley and I will ever be friends again, but at least I could take responsibility for the chaos that had spilled into her professional life. Looking back on all of this, I'm struck by how quickly things can fall apart. 6 months ago, Hannah and I were just two people getting coffee in the morning, gradually falling into something that felt comfortable and promising. Now it's over, and I'm left wondering what signs I missed. What red flags I ignored because I wanted so badly to believe this could work. The truth is, I don't think there were many signs. People can hide their insecurities and their capacity for destructive behavior until something triggers it. For Hannah, that trigger was seeing Haley, seeing how attractive she is, and realizing that this person who looked like that had been intimate with me. It made her question herself, question us, and instead of talking to me about those feelings, she destroyed something she knew mattered to me. I keep thinking about the sweater, which sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud. It was just a piece of clothing. An expensive piece of clothing, yes, a Loro Piana cashmere sweater that cost more than some people's monthly rent, but still just a thing. And yet, it represented more than that. It represented years of friendship with Haley, memories of a connection that mattered deeply to me, even though it didn't work out romantically. When Hannah destroyed it, she wasn't just tearing fabric. She was trying to erase a part of my past, to eliminate evidence that someone else had been important to me before she came along. That's what made it unforgivable. Not the material loss, but the intent behind it. A woman sent me a message after I first talked about this situation online, a long, heartfelt, and profanity-laden rant telling me I was materialistic and weird for caring more about a sweater than about the woman I was dating. She said everyone has the right to feel insecure, everyone has the right to act like an idiot sometimes, and I should be more forgiving. Maybe she's right about some of that. But what she missed, what Hannah missed, and what I hope I never forget, is that forgiveness isn't owed when someone lies to your face, manipulates you into feeling like you're the problem, and refuses to take responsibility for deliberately hurting you. Insecurity is human. Destruction born from insecurity is understandable, if not acceptable. But calculated dishonesty in the aftermath? That's where I draw the line. So Hannah is gone, working on herself somewhere up north. Haley is still out there, navigating her life and hopefully not too scarred by the workplace drama my relationship brought into her world. And I'm here, moving forward, a little more cautious, a little more aware that sometimes the sweetest people can do the cruelest things when their insecurities get the better of them. I don't regret the 6 months we spent together, but I'm grateful it ended before those 6 months turned into 6 years. Because if this is who Hannah becomes when she feels threatened, I don't want to see what would have happened down the line when the stakes were even higher. Story 3. My best friend drunkenly kissed me at his bachelor party, then his fiancée banned me from the wedding and asked me to lie about why I wasn't coming. I'm 29 years old, and I've been best friends with Andrew since we were kids. We've been through everything together, the kind of friendship where you assume you'll be standing next to each other at every major life event. So when he asked me to be a groomsman at his wedding this weekend, it felt natural, inevitable even. I've known his fiancée since they started dating long distance in high school, and I've watched their relationship grow over the years. I was genuinely happy for them, excited to be part of their big day. Then his bachelor party happened, and everything fell apart in a way I never could have predicted. We started the night at my place before transitioning to bar hopping around the city. By the end of the evening, Andrew was properly drunk, and the guys, a mix of our mutual friends and some of his cousins, started egging him on to do the whole last kiss before marriage dare. I need to be clear about something here. I hate that tradition. I've always hated it. It makes marriage look like some kind of prison sentence, like you're being held hostage to commit to the person you love, and it's just fundamentally disrespectful to your partner. I know Andrew shared that opinion too, or at least I thought he did. So when the guys started pushing him, I figured he'd laugh it off, maybe give someone a joking peck on the cheek, and we'd move on. I was wrong. Andrew turned around, grabbed me, and kissed me. Not a stupid peck, not a half-hearted laugh for the crowd. He actually dipped me, held the kiss for several seconds while everyone around us laughed obnoxiously, and I just froze. I didn't kiss back. I couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. When he finally let me go, I laughed it off because what else was I supposed to do? But the fun was gone for me after that. I left early, taking some of our drunker friends home with me, and tried not to think too hard about what had just happened. The next day, Andrew's fiancée reached out to me, first on Instagram, then on WhatsApp, then she called. She wasn't yelling or angry, just awkward and uncomfortable. She told me she knew about the kiss, and while she didn't love it, she was glad it was me and not some random woman. She said if Andrew had kissed another girl, she would have considered it cheating and dealt with it much worse. I agreed with her, backed her up, told her I would never have encouraged or allowed that. But then she said something that stopped me cold. She admitted she didn't feel comfortable with me being at the wedding anymore, because the kiss would just be in the back of her head the entire day. She asked me not to come, and then she asked me not to tell Andrew that she was the one who made that request. I was stunned, then angry, then just deeply, deeply upset. But at the end of the day, it was her wedding, and I told her I understood and wouldn't go. She thanked me for being so understanding, and that was that. I sent Andrew a text backing out, giving work as the excuse. It was a terrible lie. I freelance, so I manage my own schedule, and Andrew knows this. He went from upset to furious, telling me there was no way I was skipping his wedding for work I could reschedule. All our mutual friends started texting me in the group chat, some harsh, some passive-aggressive, all of them valid in their anger. They thought I was prioritizing work over my best friend's wedding, and I looked like a complete asshole. I was trapped. I'd been asked not to come, asked not to say why I wasn't coming, and now everyone thought I was the kind of person who'd bail on their best friend for a work deadline. The comments online when I posted about this situation set me straight pretty quickly. People told me I was shooting myself in the foot, that I needed to come clean, that Andrew's fiancée had no right to ask me to take the blame for her decision. They were right. So I sent Andrew a long text explaining everything. The kiss, his fiancée's request, her insistence that I not tell him. I felt like a coward for complying in the first place, but I also felt guilty breaking her trust even in this small way. Andrew didn't text back. He called almost immediately, and I could hear in his voice that he was emotional. He apologized about 10 times for the kiss, said he thought it would just be a dumb laugh for the guys, didn't realize how much it crossed a line for both me and his fiancée. He admitted he'd been drinking way too much that night and never wanted me to feel uncomfortable. I told him I forgave him, at least on my end. Then I told him about his fiancée's request, and there was this long, painful silence. He kept repeating, "She didn't tell me that. She didn't tell me that. I swear she didn't tell me that." He said he wished she'd talked to him directly instead of going around him, and he hated how everything looked. He also mentioned that he'd given her my contact information thinking she was planning some kind of surprise for him, not that she was going to uninvite me from the wedding. After we talked, his fiancée texted me apologizing for putting me in that position, but she still stood by her decision. She said she didn't want to be thinking about the kiss on her wedding day, and while she wasn't mad at me, she needed peace of mind. Andrew told me he wanted me there more than anything, but he understood if I didn't want to push it with his fiancée. I told him I loved him, supported him, and I'd go. He cried. I cried. We were both a mess, but it felt like the right decision. Our mutual friends were still salty with me because they didn't know the real story, and I wasn't about to spread it around. Andrew said he'd clear the air before the wedding, so until then, I just had to take the loss on looking like a flaky asshole. The wedding happened last weekend, and I found out through a bridesmaid why Andrew's fiancée reacted the way she did. It wasn't just about the bachelor party kiss. It was about Andrew in general, about a pattern of impulsive behavior when he's drunk that's followed him since high school. I'd forgotten, or never even knew about most of it. Apparently, he's done things like streaking through campus at midnight on a dare no one even pushed him into, kissing mutual friends, including me once during drinking games in high school, and a bunch of other wild stuff. Nothing that counted as cheating, but enough that he's got a reputation for taking jokes and dares way too literally. His fiancée knew about most of this, and it had been a problem in their relationship early on. So when the kiss with me happened, she didn't see it as a one-off joke. She saw it as proof his old habits weren't gone, and she panicked. In her mind, if he could do that in front of everyone, what else might happen? And because it was me this time, that constant presence in his life, I became part of the problem in her eyes. Apparently, Andrew made things worse when he got back from the bachelor party. He walked into their hotel room where his fiancée and her mother were waiting and blurted out the story very obnoxiously. That pissed off his fiancée and made her mother, who's pretty conservative, really uncomfortable. Her mother has clashed with Andrew before, and this was the last thing she wanted to see before her daughter's wedding. That same night, the two of them talked, and her mother was the one who pushed the idea that I should quietly back out. She basically told her it would be a bad look to have me standing up there as part of the wedding party. I went to the pre-party and the wedding. Both were beautiful, and everything went smoothly on the surface, but something happened afterward that really hurt. Months ago, I'd suggested this destination I'd visited on vacation when I was younger for their honeymoon. They'd both been excited, asked me for hotel and restaurant recommendations, made plans. After the wedding, I asked Andrew when they were leaving, and he hesitated before saying they'd changed plans to somewhere completely different. I was surprised, but we laughed about it, and I wished them a great time. Looking back now, I realize it's another way of cutting out my influence, of icing me out, and that's when the reality of the situation really hit me. Now that it's been a few days and I've driven back home, I've accepted what's coming. While I'm glad I went to the wedding, I'm not hopeful about our friendship being the same. I love Andrew deeply, and I really do love his wife too. I understand why things turned out this way, but I wish I hadn't been the one involved. Drama is fun to watch when it's not your life falling apart. I want to be clear that the blame here is on Andrew. While I don't think I deserve to be put in this position, I also believe his wife and her mother tried their best to treat me fairly, even when it was hard for them. I forgive them, and I hope to move forward, even if the friendship I had with Andrew for 20 years will probably never look the same again. The hardest part is accepting that I've been sidelined. That's the perfect word for it. I'm no longer the best friend who gets consulted on major decisions or invited on trips. I'm the guy who represents a problem in their marriage, a reminder of Andrew's impulsive behavior, a connection to a version of him his wife wants him to leave behind. I understand it intellectually, but emotionally, it feels like losing someone who's been part of my life for as long as I can remember. Part of me wants to tell Andrew exactly how much this hurts, to say, I know what you did was a dumb, drunken mistake, but it really sucks that you put me in this position. I can't help but feel like our friendship will never be the same. I don't expect you to choose me over your wife, but it really sucks to just be tossed aside because you can't hold your liquor. But I don't think it's right to say that so soon after his wedding. Maybe eventually, when the time seems right, I'll tell him. Or maybe I won't, and we'll just drift apart the way people do when their lives take different paths. For now, I'm left with this strange mixture of grief and acceptance. Grief for a friendship that's changing in ways I can't control, and acceptance that sometimes being a good friend means stepping back even when it hurts. I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm the one paying the price, and that's just how it is sometimes. Life isn't fair, and friendships don't always survive the transitions into marriage and new family dynamics. I hope Andrew's happy. I hope his marriage is strong and fulfilling, and I hope that somewhere down the line, there's still room for me in his life, even if it looks different than it used to. Story 4. My boyfriend of 8 years. Says I'm the abusive one, but I'm starting to realize he's been gaslighting me into thinking I'm crazy. This entire time. I'm 23 years old, and I've spent the last 8 years of my life with someone who has convinced me that everything wrong in our relationship is my fault. I know how that sounds. I know what you're probably thinking right now, that I should have left years ago, that the red flags were obvious, that anyone with half a brain could see what was happening. But when you're in it, when you're living it every single day, the lines get so blurred that you can't tell which way is up anymore. I'm writing this because I need someone, anyone, to tell me if I'm the problem here. Because he says I am. He says I'm abusive, that I'm the reason he drinks, that I'm the reason he punches holes in walls and screams at me until I can't breathe. And I'm so confused that I don't even know what's real anymore. We started dating when I was 15 and he was 20. I know that alone should have been a warning sign, but I was going through hell at the time and he seemed like the only person who understood me. He was my first boyfriend, my first everything, and I thought that meant something. In the beginning, I was the one always compromising, always finding ways to see him. I lived about an hour away and didn't even have a car, so I'd take the bus or get friends to drive me to his place. He rarely came to see me, and when he did, he'd complain the entire time that he shouldn't have to make the effort. He'd ask me to come over every single night, saying he missed me and couldn't sleep without me there. So I'd find a way to get to his house, excited to spend time with him, and then I'd sit on his couch alone for hours while he played video games. It was infuriating. I played games too, so I'd ask if I could bring my console, but he always told me not to because I could use his. The problem was, he had literally 0 games for it, so I'd just pace around his house, waiting for him to give me even a second of his attention. When he'd finally finish playing, he'd be so sweet and sincere, telling me how glad he was that he could keep up with his gaming and still have a girlfriend. He said his last 3 girlfriends had broken up with him because they hated him gaming, but I wasn't like them. I was the cool girlfriend, and I was young and stupid enough to believe that was a compliment. I used to have a life before him. I went to clubs and parties, had tons of friends, mostly guys I'd known since I was little. He hated that. He'd get upset if I talked to any of them, even the ones I'd known since I was a toddler. He said that since he didn't talk to girls, I shouldn't talk to guys either. It seemed fair at the time, or at least I convinced myself it did. What I didn't know was that he was talking to several girls the entire time, lying to my face about it while using his fake rule to isolate me from everyone I cared about. He told me he loved me 2 days into dating. 2 days. And then he proposed after a few months. I told him I wasn't ready, that I loved him, but I was too young and needed to get to know him better. He changed after that, like my saying no had wounded him in some fundamental way. A few months into the relationship, I'd tell him I was about to do something simple, like walk to the grocery store since I didn't have a car, and he would scream at me over the phone, not raise his voice, scream. He'd call me an idiot, say I was going to get myself killed, that women can't walk alone, especially near nighttime. When I'd ask why he was yelling at me, tell him it wasn't okay to treat me like that, he'd say, "I have never and will never yell at you." He'd deny it so completely, so convincingly, that I started doubting my own memory. I started wondering if I was crazy, if I was imagining things, if maybe I deserved to be treated that way. I moved in with him about 10 months into the relationship because my mother died and I had nowhere else to go. I had a job, but it didn't pay enough to support myself. His family owned farmland in the south and had bought him his own house, so he offered to let me stay. I thought I was lucky. I thought he was saving me. About a year into living together, I found out he'd lied about everything he'd told me about himself. The worst part was how I discovered it. He just forgot he'd lied and started telling me the truth casually, like it didn't matter. He'd say things like, "I almost married my high school sweetheart, but she changed her mind at the last second," or, "My 10th girlfriend or so calls me every weekend to say she wants to fuck me." This was after he'd told me he'd only been with 3 people before me and didn't talk to any exes. None of it would have mattered if he'd been honest from the start, but he'd used his lies to justify isolating me from my male friends while he maintained relationships with multiple women behind my back. A few weeks after I found out about his lies, I told him I was going to the movies with a female friend for her birthday. I said the movie started at 7 and I'd be back before midnight. We weren't drinking or partying, just watching a movie. At 9:30, I started getting horrible texts. I was a lying bitch. I'd better enjoy the dick I'm getting because I'm never getting his again, and he didn't want to see me when I got home. I was devastated. It was the first time I'd seen any friend since we started dating, and my friend saw what he was sending me. She didn't say anything, but I could see the concern on her face. I ignored him and got home at 11. The house was trashed, and he was waiting for me. When I asked what he was talking about, he slammed the door in my face so hard it hit me in the nose and screamed, "Fuck off!" I slept on the couch that night. The next day, he left without saying a word for a softball game he'd planned with friends. He was going to be out of state, sleeping in a motel room with multiple single guys and girls for the next 5 days. I called him as soon as I woke up and told him he was an asshole and I was done. He was desperate on the phone, begging for another chance, but I hung up. I packed everything I owned and tried to leave, but he showed up right before I could and was very sincere about getting help. He promised therapy, promised to stop punching holes in walls, promised to pay more attention to me, and even let me go to clubs again and resume contact with my male friends. The next day, he stayed out until 5 in the morning at a strip club and came back without his promise ring on. He said he'd put it in his pocket so he wouldn't lose it, but he smelled strange and was acting strange, and I knew he'd cheated. He denied it vehemently, said I was insane for accusing him and that we should just break up if I wasn't going to trust him. I said okay and started packing again. Then he said he'd never said any of that I was making things up, that I was crazy. I didn't know what to believe anymore. He did start therapy. He went for 3 months, and nothing changed. He continued to punch and break things, scream at me, tell me everything was my fault, and that he couldn't stand me. He turned to drinking, and when he'd get violent and drunk, he said I was the reason he was forced to drink, because I was causing him so many problems. Things got better, then worse, up and down for years, but we had a good period of about 4 years where I thought maybe we'd turned a corner. But there were still fights, still moments that broke me. The day my favorite aunt died, I was with her at the hospital. I drove a terrible vehicle that was known for breaking down. After she passed, I was a mess. I told him I was leaving and would be back soon. We lived only a few minutes down the street, but my car broke down and I was about 15 minutes late. When I got home, he was furious. He said I was cheating on him. That was why I was late. Screamed that I was a cheater so loud that our landlord heard the whole thing. The landlord always hated me after that. There was no apology when he calmed down. Instead, it was my fault for causing him to worry. I started feeling depressed about the amount of porn he watched versus how often he was interested in me. We used to have sex all the time. I'd tried everything to satisfy him, even agreed to 6 different threesomes with girls he chose. But then, I just stopped being enough. He preferred porn to me, and I had 0 self-esteem left. I was dreading waking up every morning. One day, after a month of no sex, he locked himself in the bathroom and I could hear him in there. I got so sick to my stomach that I had an anxiety attack. I was hyperventilating on the floor when he came out, and for a moment he was sweet, asking what was wrong and to please talk to him. I trusted him. I shouldn't have. I told him in the calmest voice I could manage that it made me feel sad when he chose porn over me, that we'd had sex 4 times in 3 months, and I wished I had more from him. He completely lost it. He grabbed my shoulders so hard his nails dug in, shook me, and screamed that he doesn't even watch porn, that he's so whipped by a stupid bitch, that his life is shit because of me. I've always been sensitive and cry easily, and I know that makes him feel like I'm trying to manipulate him. But even if I lock myself in the bathroom to cry in private, it's still my fault, and I'm using it to control him. I had nowhere to go, and I couldn't not cry sometimes. Most of this year was okay, but the past few months he's been screaming more. He told me I'm a horrible person for trying to leave him years ago, that I don't deserve him, and will never find another guy who'd put up with me. He always denies things and tries to make me sound crazy, so this time, I recorded it. When he was calmer, I played it for him, and he accused me of inviting guys over to pretend to be him so I could get him in trouble. He's gone through every file on my computer and set the only explicit one he could find as my desktop background to humiliate me, because he knew his family was coming over. He wanted them to see the filthy things I look at. This from a man with an actual porn addiction. The hypocrisy is something I can't even begin to understand. I know this is toxic. I know I feel suicidal most days. But I need to know one thing. Am I the abusive one? Because he's convinced it's me. He says my trying to leave years ago was worse than cheating, that I'm the abuser and he's the victim. I'm so confused and constantly devastated and lonely. I have no one if I lose him. I posted about my situation online yesterday, looking for perspective, trying to figure out if I was crazy. Within hours, he texted me saying he'd seen my post and was coming home. I grabbed the emergency backpack my therapist had me prepare and was planning to just walk somewhere, anywhere. But when I opened the door, he was already there. He'd been parked down the street, waiting for me to leave. When he sent that text saying he was coming home, he was already home. He was fucking waiting. I froze. I thought he'd be furious, but instead he was crying, actually sobbing. He ran up to me, hugged me tight, and said he was so sorry. He said he had no idea I felt that way, that he knows he has jealousy issues and a temper, and asked if we could talk about it inside. He begged me to come in, said he couldn't lose me, that he loved me. I didn't know what to do. I just followed him in. He took my backpack from me, and when he looked at it, he broke down again. He asked if I was really leaving him, why I didn't tell him things were this bad, why I never talked to him. I told him I can't talk to him. Every single time I've decided to trust him and open up about even the smallest thing that bothers me. He loses his mind and starts screaming while I sit there as quiet as possible and apologize. That's when he changed. He was no longer acting sorry. He switched to, "You're full of shit. I treat you like a goddamn angel and get walked all over in return." He said he should never have to apologize to me. I was upset, so I played one of the fights I'd recorded. I'm so glad I kept those after he told me to delete them. Even in the first 3 minutes, you can tell I was being calm. The first thing I say is, "Baby, I didn't mean to say anything was wrong with us. I just wanted to know why you don't want me to apply at this place where I could use my degree. I just want to help make money." He immediately starts yelling, "You'll cheat on me and find someone better. Fuck off. Go find some guy to fuck. I don't give a fuck. You'll come crawling back to me. No one else would put up with you. Fuck you." He only listened to a few seconds before he got up and said, "Fuck off with that shit." He wasn't apologetic or sweet anymore. He said he was done with this, that I had no right to record him, and then he ripped the phone out of my hand. He said more things I can't remember, then stomped outside and threw my phone as hard as he could into the street. That broke my heart more than anything. He'd broken my things before, but I'd been planning to call someone for help, and I didn't know anyone's number by heart. When I asked what he did with it, he wouldn't answer. He slammed the door so hard when he came back in that I flinched, then bumped into me roughly and went straight to his computer where he put his headphones on and turned up his music really loud. He always does that when he's mad because then he can't hear me. I stood in the doorway, and when he looked up at me, the hatred in his eyes was awful. It wasn't even the first time he'd looked at me that way. I went outside to look for my phone and found it shattered on the street, unusable, battery missing. When I went back inside, I was shaking, but something in me just felt done. I grabbed his phone off the counter and ran outside. I knew he used to text my brother and had the number of the friend I'd watched a movie with years ago, so I used his phone to call them. My brother answered on the second ring, and I didn't know what to say. I just poured my heart out, told him I was sorry we hadn't talked in so long, that I was really scared and had nowhere to go. What he said hurt more than anything my boyfriend had ever done. The last thing he said was, "You deserve everything that's happening to you," and hung up. He hates me. He really thinks I deserve to stay with my abuser because I'm attracted to women. I called my friend next. She didn't answer at first, but then called right back. I told her everything, and she said she was 30 minutes away and would come with her husband. Those 30 minutes waiting were horrible. I didn't want my boyfriend to come out of his room because I'm a terrible liar and he'd know something was up. I quickly packed my essentials, cords, controllers, clothes, small things I couldn't live without, but left the big stuff. My friend got there fast, and her husband helped me load my desk, chair, and computer into their truck. I left without saying a word to him. I could still hear him playing games in the other room, and part of me wanted him to come out, hug me, tell me it was okay. My heart hurts so much today. When I think about his face and smile and everything that was good, I feel like there's a huge hole in my chest. But when I play those recorded fights and think about my future and this amazing friend who came to save me and everything I can do with my life, I feel happy. I thought I needed him, but it's amazing feeling like I don't. I'm with my friend now, and she lives in a house I've never been to, so I'm pretty sure he won't find it. She invited another girl I haven't seen in years to go to a concert on Friday, and I'm so excited. We had strawberry daiquiris and watched stupid horror movies all night, and her husband made waffles this morning. I'm free. I'm so fucking happy. I'm fucking free. Something I forgot to mention. My friend's husband, who's a software developer, noticed something on my computer when I turned it on at their house. It's called Sniper Spy, and that's how he knew about my post. I thought he'd been obsessively checking the subreddit, but no. He'd installed spyware on my computer. I never saw the icon before, so it must have popped back up when I restarted. Just a warning to anyone who values their privacy. I didn't realize it was possible to spy on someone like that. Looking back now with some distance, I can see how every single thing he did was designed to make me doubt myself, to make me feel like I was the problem, to isolate me from anyone who might tell me the truth. He chose me when I was 15 and vulnerable. He lied about everything from the start. He slowly cut me off from friends and family. He made me financially dependent on him. He monitored my every move. He screamed at me until I couldn't tell reality from his version of events. And then he told me I was the abusive one. Story 5. My sister's toddler destroyed my $2,000 gaming setup. She refused to pay and blamed me. Then everything spiraled into a custody battle that tore our family apart. I'm 25 years old, a student software developer, and a serious PC gamer in my free time. I live alone in a tiny one-bedroom apartment that I've spent years making exactly the way I want it. I saved for a long time to build my dream gaming setup, triple monitors, custom mechanical keyboard, ergonomic chair, the works. The whole rig cost just over $2,000, and I took care of it like some people take care of their cars. It was mine, something I'd worked hard for, something that represented years of sacrifice and careful budgeting. And then my sister's 3-year-old destroyed it in one morning, and everything that came after changed my family forever. Last weekend, my older sister asked if she could crash at my place for one night because her apartment was being fumigated and her husband was out of town. She has a son named Max, who's 3 years old, and what you might call spirited. I love the kid, but he's a tiny chaos agent, the kind of toddler who treats every space like a playground and every object like a toy. I hesitated when she asked, but she promised she'd keep an eye on him, and it would just be one night. I figured I could handle it. I was wrong. They showed up Saturday afternoon, and within 10 minutes of arriving, Max had pulled 4 books off my shelf, thrown my houseplants onto the floor, and spilled juice on my area rug. I tried to stay calm. He's 3. Kids are destructive. I get it. But I asked my sister politely to please keep him out of my office, the converted closet where my PC setup lives. She rolled her eyes and said something dismissive about him just being curious and exploring, but she closed the door anyway. I thought that was the end of it. I thought my setup was safe. Sunday morning, I woke up to screaming. Max had apparently woken up before his mother, managed to open the office door somehow, and decided my gaming setup was his new jungle gym. He pulled down one of my monitors, cracking the screen. He stuck crackers into the PC tower's ventilation slots. He yanked out my keyboard's keycaps and colored on my chair with permanent marker. And the cherry on top, he poured apple juice directly into the tower, inside the computer, into the components that cost me years of savings. When I walked into that room and saw the damage, I went completely silent. Not because I didn't want to scream, but because I couldn't process what I was seeing. My sister came in behind me, looked at the wreckage, and said, "Oh no," in this incredibly flat tone, like someone had knocked over a cup of coffee. When I started freaking out, she had the audacity to tell me I should have baby-proofed the room if it was that important to me. I lost it. I told her she knew he wasn't supposed to be in there, that this is my space, not a daycare, and that baby-proofing a $2,000 gaming setup is not a standard requirement for adults living alone. She told me to calm down. She said he's just a kid and stuff is replaceable. I told her she could replace it then. She said she didn't have the money right now, but maybe in a few months she could give me a few $100s. A few hundred. For over $2,000 in damages. I told her that wasn't acceptable and she needed to take full responsibility. She left in a huff, and within hours my entire family was blowing up my phone. My mom said I was being materialistic and should understand that my nephew didn't mean it. My dad said I should have locked the door if it was that important. My brother asked why I even needed 3 monitors anyway, said it seemed like overkill. I filed a claim with my insurance, but they told me there was no guarantee it would be covered since it was technically guest damage. I told my sister that if she didn't pay up, I'd take her to small claims court. She demanded an apology from me, blaming her kid for being curious. I told her I'd drop it if she covered the cost of repairs and replacements, or at least met me halfway. She blocked me, just completely blocked me on everything. My sister's husband reached out separately a few hours later, asking what happened. I told him everything, and he seemed genuinely sorry and confused. He said he wanted to figure something out, that he didn't know the full extent of what had happened, and suspected my sister had lied to him. That gave me a small sliver of hope. But what really started to change things was when he came over the following Saturday to check the damage himself. He brought Max with him, which initially made me furious, but he had a reason. He asked Max to try opening the office door. The kid couldn't do it. The door was too heavy for him to open on his own. My brother-in-law's face changed when he saw that. He offered to take my PC to the shop that originally built it for me to see what was fixable. I agreed, but asked for something in writing, just a simple agreement that he'd be responsible for it while it was with him. It was mostly a formality to help me feel in control of something. On Monday, he dropped it off and gave them my number for updates. He also told me he'd confronted my sister about how things played out. I'd sent him my original post about the situation, and he read the comments and apparently showed them to her. She still hadn't unblocked me, and from what I heard, she was furious that he was actually listening to me. I also shared the post with my parents and brother since no one had really believed me before. My parents still didn't fully get it, but they at least stopped pushing back. My brother was more understanding, though for some reason he mostly wanted to talk about how many people had seen the post. I don't think any of them really cared, but at least they'd stopped making me feel crazy. The shop told me the PC was mostly salvageable. It needed a very careful internal cleaning, some fans replaced, some wiring fixed, but the main parts had somehow survived. My brother-in-law said he'd cover the cost of the repair without hesitation. That's when he told me something that made my stomach drop. He said when I mentioned my sister claimed she couldn't pay even $200, that she was lying. They had the money. He also said he wasn't sure Max had actually done all the damage. He thought the door might have been left open on purpose, or that my sister might have done some of it herself. Based on the height of the tower and where the crackers ended up, it didn't quite add up to a toddler acting alone. Then he told me something even worse. My sister had been telling him I had a gambling addiction because I'd spent some money on a mobile game called Genshin Impact 4 years ago. She was saying maybe this whole incident would wake me up, that I needed to grow up. I didn't want to believe my sister had deliberately destroyed my property. It felt like too much of a stretch, too cruel to be real. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. The way she rolled her eyes when I asked her to keep Max out of the office. Like she didn't take any of it seriously. The comments she'd apparently been making to her husband about me needing to grow up and stop wasting money on games. She used to be supportive, or at least neutral about my hobbies. Something had changed, and I didn't know when or why. If this was her twisted way of teaching me a lesson, of making a point about how I spent my time and money, that was unforgivable. Within a week of my brother-in-law confronting her, my sister kicked him out of the house. Not just asked him to leave, but literally packed his things and dumped them by the curb like he was garbage. He told me she'd screamed that he was betraying her and taking the side of that fucking Reddit bitch, meaning me. She also accused him of conspiring with me to humiliate her publicly, and bizarrely, of cheating on her with me. She hasn't let him see their son since. No visits, no phone calls. She's gone completely dark, threatening to call the cops if he goes near the house. She blocked me, my brother, even some extended family, and was only talking to our parents, who I think were enabling her just to keep some connection to Max. Meanwhile, I started hearing rumors that my sister was telling people I was unhinged and psychotic, that I'd made the whole thing up. She told one of our cousins that I'd somehow lured Max into the office like it was a trap or setup. I didn't know if this was postpartum related, or if something had snapped in her, or if she'd always been this vindictive and I just hadn't wanted to see it. But I was scared. Scared for her kid, scared for her husband, and honestly scared for myself. Because if she was willing to destroy her marriage and turn the entire family against me just to protect a lie, what else was she capable of? My parents wanted to keep everything quiet, but my brother-in-law wanted to get her help. I wanted to get her help too, but I didn't know where to start. She was an adult with free will, but I feared for her safety and my nephew's safety. My brother-in-law told my parents he wanted a divorce and would get his son whether they approved or not. His side of the family was furious with mine, and I felt like I'd somehow started all of this over a gaming computer. The next 6 months were a nightmare of legal proceedings and family implosion. My PC got fixed and has been running beautifully ever since, which feels almost symbolic. After everything blew up in my life, at least this one thing I cared about is still standing. I've gotten closer to my brother-in-law, or ex-brother-in-law now, I guess, though it feels weird to call him that since he's still family to me. He has full custody of Max, and that little kid is thriving. He's calmer, happier, genuinely joyful to be around in ways I didn't realize were possible before. He turned 4 after all the court proceedings ended, so we could actually celebrate his birthday in peace. My parents eventually came around. When things first went down, they were still on my sister's side, and I was basically the black sheep. But something happened during the legal proceedings that made them realize she wasn't well and that I hadn't been exaggerating about anything. They reached out, apologized, admitted they'd been wrong. Sort of. It's been slow. But they've been trying to rebuild things with me. Part of me resents that it took this much for them to finally see the truth, but I'm also relieved not to be completely estranged from them anymore. As for my sister, I don't even know how to start. During the custody battle, she completely broke down. A lot came out, including the fact that she'd broken and damaged other people's things in the past, friends' belongings, co-workers' stuff, all deliberately. She admitted she did it because, in her words, my brother-in-law owed her more as the mother of their child, and destroying things was her way of making him notice her. She said something else that stuck with me. She said when she broke things, she felt powerful. People underestimated her, ignored her, treated her like she was just a mom. But when she destroyed something, she couldn't be ignored. It forced people to react. That explains so much of her behavior, not just with my PC but with her marriage, with our family, with how everything spiraled. She wanted to feel like she mattered, but instead of asking for help in a healthy way, she turned to control and destruction. And when that wasn't enough, she escalated. My brother-in-law had apparently suggested couples therapy multiple times, but she'd refused. After she lost custody of Max, things spiraled even faster. She had a complete breakdown, and now she's in jail awaiting transfer to a psychiatric facility. I don't want to go into every detail, but it'll be a long time before I see her again, if I even want to. Here's the part I can't make peace with. I feel bad for her. I know that sounds insane after everything she put me through. After how she tore our family apart, after what she did to her own son. But she's still my sister. There's this ache I can't get rid of, because I don't know if the person she is now is who she always was, or if something snapped along the way. I look back on our childhood and wonder if there were signs I missed, patterns of behavior I brushed off as sibling rivalry that were actually something darker. What makes it worse is how my posts spread. I never expected them to blow up the way they did. I just wanted outside perspective because my family was gaslighting me, making me feel insane for protecting my own belongings. Then suddenly it was everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, even news articles. Someone told me Smosh featured my story, which was surreal and honestly humiliating. Strangers were debating my family like we were reality TV, and I had no control over it. At first I was grateful for the validation, but over time it started eating at my conscience. One of our cousins told me my sister would rant constantly about the posts during legal proceedings, always bringing it back to how I'd publicly humiliated her. She'd spend hours scrolling, trying to find my posts, looking for new comments even after I hid them. It was like pouring salt in a wound she couldn't stop picking at. I keep asking myself if I made things worse by leaving everything up as long as I did, if I gave her more ammunition for her paranoia, if I pushed her toward the breakdown that ended with her losing everything. Part of me feels like I failed her, like maybe if I'd been more careful, she wouldn't have spiraled so badly. But then I remind myself that it wasn't the internet that broke her. It was something already inside her. The posts didn't make her destroy my PC or lash out at her husband or neglect her child. Those were choices she made long before I ever posted anything online. I can't control what happened after. The internet never forgets, and copies of my posts are archived somewhere I'll never see. What I can control is how I move forward, how I take care of myself, my nephew, and the family I still have. Moving forward has been complicated. My daily life feels lighter without the constant chaos of my sister's presence. I'm not walking on eggshells, not waking up to accusatory texts, not waiting for the next outburst. That freedom is something I didn't realize I needed so desperately. But there's also this strange emptiness where she used to be. Even if her presence was destructive, she was still there, part of the fabric of my family. Now there's just this jagged hole. My nephew asks about her sometimes. He doesn't fully understand. He just knows mommy is sick and can't take care of him right now. We try to keep our answers simple, but I don't know what kind of relationship he'll be able to have with her in the future. I think about that constantly, because no matter how much she's hurt me, I can't stop imagining what it'll feel like for him when he's old enough to learn the truth. How do you explain to a child that their mother did what my sister has done? I don't know what I'll say when that day comes. I've been in therapy since this started, recommended by people in the comments and messages I received. At first it was just a way to vent, but it's become essential. My therapist keeps reminding me that none of this is my fault, that my sister's choices were her own, that I didn't ruin her life by posting about the PC, that it's not my job to fix her. I hope one day I'll believe that completely. As for my sister, I don't know what the future holds, or if she'll ever get better. But I know this. Sometimes asking for outside perspective when you're being gaslit isn't wrong. Sometimes protecting your boundaries isn't selfish. And sometimes the people we love make choices that destroy everything, and all we can do is try to pick up the pieces for those left behind.